It's the Hitman, Bret Hart. Welcome back, buddy. Good to be back. How are you? I'm really good. You good? There was a time, I remember the first time you came on the show a few years ago, there was a real, I know you missed it and you loved being a part of it, but never in a million years thought you'd be back in that, especially with the people you're back in with.
Yeah, I know. I thought about it for so many years, and you carry it around, and after a while, the best thing to do is to make peace with it. It really is.
Is that what happened for you?
Yeah, it was a really hurtful thing. On top of everything else that happened, it was just made it so hard to love wrestling again, or even enjoy it again. But I think a lot of it for me has to do with some of the young Hart family, the younger ones that are getting into the wrestling now. That are, it's good for me to go back and see if I can do something good for them.
Is there an element of closure for you in a way to try to whenever you decide to leave again, it's just completely different terms? Because McMahon and the WWFE, they screwed you over the first time.
Yeah, but in saying that, and nobody knows that better than I do, and at the same time, I wouldn't be talking to you right now if it wasn't for all the things that Vince McMahon and WWE did for me.
True.
So you got to take them both, and in the end, I think it bothered me more that people would look at me as always sort of a tragic figure, or somebody that was bitter or left with a chip on his shoulder about everything that happened. And I don't know that that's a better way to, I always, to me, the last few years, my thinking kind of turned around to trying to take something negative and turn it into a positive. And, to be honest, just to have some fun. I kind of got a little bored up in Calgary.
Yeah, well, hey, listen, there's a lot to do in Calgary for a weekend, and then that's it, right? Don't write letters, all right? I get it. I know. It's a lovely place. Yeah, so what was that moment then like? How did the first call happen that decided to get you back in here?
Well, it's funny. I approached them first about doing something.
Did you call Vince and say, let's talk?
And I talked to somebody else that was head of the production, the TV production. And I didn't actually know how to get a hold of Vince McMahon. So I called him, and I suggested, some different things that maybe we could do if they were interested. And I never heard back from him for about 6 months, and then they called me out of nowhere, and we started talking about how we might do it, go back and do something that might be, for me, I just wanted to do something that was fun. That was the bottom line, just to, as long as it was fun and it could, just change sort of, it'd be a new chapter, I, first and foremost, I'll say that, I'll never be the Bret the Hitman Hart, the wrestler that I was, with the pink tights and all that. That's a whole different story. I'll never be that guy, and I'm not really pretending to be that guy. But at the same time, I think it was important to, as a lot of things for me, just to take a challenge, to do something. I remember I did it with Aladdin when I was the genie, and now doing it with this. It's like, like I say, you can sit around home. I've done okay by wrestling, and my life is pretty good right now, but it's kind of fun leaving every week and going out to the shows and, just being Bret the Hitman Hart again for a few minutes.
That's a real rush, right?
Yeah, it seemed like I was gone from it in WWE for, I think, almost 13 years. And, it's hard to even count WCW. But it's like when I left and came back, it seemed like when I walked out and sort of walked down to the ramp with my music playing and all that, it seemed like I've been gone about 3 months.
Well, I'll tell you, we have, this show's been on for 6 years, and we have people from all walks of life on, and their fans often joining. We would never have this before. I just want to, for 1 second. Man, sir, thank you. I mean, for the love of God, look, right? Dudes bring their own championship belts. Like, your relationship with the audience is pretty. Would you like to hold it? Are you allowed to hold it?
Sure.
Yeah?
It's a lot lighter than
the actual one is? But it speaks to just the kind of relationship that your brand of sport or entertainment that wrestling has with its people.
The wrestling fans, they're out there. I can tell just walking through the airports and stuff. And they're the most surprising people because they come from all over the place, from, people that you wouldn't think are wrestling fans or closet wrestling fans that watch everything. And, it's a release for people. And I think if you take it for all the whole, what it all is, I like to think back when I go back to my career that, when I say that there was no animals harmed in the making of any of my movies, it's the truth. I was a total pro in there. I could kick you in the face and you wouldn't even know it, and it wouldn't hurt you the next, after it was over. I was very realistic and very physical.
In the last 5 seconds, did you kick me in the face?
No.
Just wanted to be sure.
But to have that kind of trust with somebody and to know you can do those kind of things and never ever hurt anybody. You know, I stand by my motto that I was the best there is and the best there was and the best there ever will be.
I'll tell you, man, after the run of, go ahead, you can clap. Wrestling needed you, right? Right after, you know, in the era of those, you know, when the steroids thing came down, these big, bulky he-men, and then all of a sudden you show up as a champion. I mean, you were big, but you weren't like those guys, and you had a lot more, you know, there was more aerobic. It just seemed like wrestling really needed guys like you at that time, didn't it?
I was the first of the smaller wrestlers, and the truth is that I wasn't a wrestler that was about my size. Like when I always say back a long time ago, when Hulk Hogan walked in, you really knew it was Hulk Hogan. He was like a giant sort of thing. Bret Hart walks in with a belt. Most people didn't even sort of look up. It was very normal, you know.
They just thought you liked really ornate belts.
You know, I can go shopping and no one bothers me. Like it's like so. Yeah, so you got to get special pants made for the belts.
The biggest loops ever, just to get that in. Now that you've come back and been a part of the storyline, the storylines have changed over the last little while. I noticed that. You know, I know even when you weren't in it for a while, the storylines have become far more adult, far more girls in bikinis, and even if you had kids watching it was uncomfortable. But I think the WWE has PG rating again on television, and it seems like the storylines have changed. Have you noticed that?
Yeah, it's kind of backed up a little bit. I think that sort of hardcore male audience has moved on to, a lot of them anyway, have moved on to UFC, which is where they belong probably in the first place. And wrestling has gone back to the grandpa and the kids, and it's kind of back where it should have been in the first place too.
The relationship you have with people is obvious from different age groups, and when we come back to the break, I want to run down some of the cities that you've been to, because I'm sure wrestling it's big everywhere, but it's different in each different community. I wondered for you though, did you guys hate when The Wrestler came out, the Mickey Rourke movie? I wondered how wrestlers who had done it for long, because everybody talked about it, and then they expected that that's what it was really like.
You know, I thought the movie was really good, and it did represent a lot of truth about what does go on in some of the wrestling circuits around the country. But what I was kind of hoping for was that before the movie ever came out, I thought maybe there'll finally be a movie that makes the wrestler kind of feel proud of himself, that there can be a great life being a wrestler, and there's rewards for it, and somehow make you proud of it. Because I think wrestling always gets zinged, and you know, for years we never got any credit for anything, for being great athletes or great actors or anything. And so to finally get the opportunity for a movie to sort of, with these great actors, to tell a story about our lives, I was hoping that it would tell something more positive, but I think you got to read my book for that.
We talked about you talking to the TV producer, you getting back into wrestling. What was that first conversation like with Vince? And I wonder what your relationship is like with McMahon now.
I think there was a surprise at what a change of tune I had about everything, and you know, going through this whole process with him, you know, I think my sense, like people watched when Shawn Michaels shook hands with me and we kind of buried the hatchet in the ring.
Because he was the guy that pulled the big caper on you, that was him.
Yeah, it was far more real than people might imagine, because we really didn't see each other since it happened. And then we talked briefly for about 30 seconds earlier in the show, and then we walked out and did it. And I think it was quite real, and I sensed when I did it that I hope he's not a little jerk for like the rest of the time I'm here. And then I realized that it was all kind of plastic. But the truth is, I feel like my judgment on it is that he feels like he's been set free, and that he's been Shawn Michaels. And I think the same for Vince. I think the general motive behind all this stuff with Vince McMahon, I think in truth, I mean, I think it's he's got to have felt pretty bad over the years about all the sort of bad things that happened with my brother Owen and the whole family. And I think this whole sort of going back and sort of working with them again, sort of, I think it's kind of set him free a little bit too. It makes everyone kind of, we're all moving in a different direction now.
You would imagine, because I mean, I know just as a family member you have to, you know, the loss of your brother, but you know, Vincent, the wrestling and the role and everybody played, like I imagine that would have been quite a burden emotionally for him over the years.
I'm sure that, you know, and then once you sort of understand the fact that it was just a really tragic accident, and no one's been able to tell me anything different than that. And, you know, I think it's got to weigh heavy on anybody, especially Vince McMahon. You know, through all the years, I think, for the most part, I think he was always pretty good to my family.
Tell me about WrestleMania comes to a city, and that city becomes very excited. But I mean, for people who even aren't fans of wrestling, you can show them a different part of the world because you've been and enjoyed it. What was being in Dubai like as a wrestler?
You know, I got so many different memories from so many different places. But as soon as you mentioned Dubai, I think I was at a Burger King, and they were doing a Meet the Wrestlers autograph session. They went so crazy that they broke all the glass inside and just broke the place down until they pushed us in a car and drove us off. There was no signing or anything that we were supposed to do.
You guys are like the Beatles, man.
You always think, I wish someone would film that, and that we get credit for that kind of stuff. But it was a unique time back then.
What about Puerto Rico?
Well, Puerto Rico, I didn't have the best memories from there when I first started. It was pretty violent wrestling, kind of. I remember I was supposed to be involved in a run-in at the end of the match where we were supposed to interfere with the two wrestlers fighting, and I remember it was like a full-scale riot on, and I can remember this one couple, this guy holding his, I assume it's his girlfriend or his wife's hand or something like that. And I remember they were an American couple. They had like the Bermuda shorts, and I remember they had their back to everything, and I saw this referee fighting his way back from the ring with a chair. He just was knocking down everybody that was within sight of him. And I was supposed to run in and interfere, and I said, I remember it was raining chairs, and I said, I'm not going anywhere near that. And I just stayed with my back against the wall, and I watched this referee twirling around, and finally came up and just decked this fan holding his wife's hand and knocked him out cold. And I remember his wife standing there kind of wondering what happened to her husband. And I remember the whole thing. I remember thinking I should run over and try to save, but it was going to be too late. I could see it all happening before it happened, like a car wreck. And anyway, it was just some of those things you never forget.
You know, when I talk to bands who travel around the world, one of the cities they always bring up as an interesting city to perform in is Germany, or a country is Germany, regardless of the city they play in. But in the country of Germany, the fans are all very interested, but it's a weird thing because the fans don't clap or they don't rock out to the band. They watch the band like this. And then when it's over, they go. And it's a really, what's it like to wrestle in Germany?
It was completely the opposite for me. When I wrestled in Germany, it was like Beatlemania. I remember being tackled by girls and old grandmas and everybody. They'd all pull me down, and I remember they'd be groping me in all kinds of places. And I remember thinking,
the grandmothers?
Yeah, I'm not kidding you. They'd be pinching my butt cheeks and everything. And I'd be pinned down with the security guards, and we'd be lying there, and nobody could move, and it was like a big pile, like a
German grandmother pile. That's a website.
Yeah, it was like that every night.
Unbelievable. Now, when you wrestle Vince at WrestleMania, will you stick to script or will you have a moment?
I'm always a professional.
There you go. It's good to see you, man. Thanks for coming.